The day of the war, the VSU was hit by a chemical plant in Moscow. There are a lot of footage of the Ukrainian drones being hit. According to the Telegram channel, the plant has been stopped. It was engaged in repair and modernization of jet artillery, as well as the production of ammunition. VSU company continues to defeat the plant, and the Russian PVO is clearly not in its way. The collapse in the Russian airports caused by the Ukrainian drones lasted 2 days and caused losses of 20 billion rubles. It also led to the resignation of the Minister of Transport Starovoit. In the morning, Putin removed him from office. The tactics of blocking Russian air traffic once again proved to be incredibly effective. If the Soviet Union has resources, it must be done constantly. Vladimir Putin has some kind of strange connection with the killed General Mikhail Gudkov, a butcher from the 155th Brigade. The Russian dictator has been talking about him for several days, giving awards, meeting with his wife and threatening to call him by the street name. I don't understand how they were related. There is no other such military man who would get so much attention from Putin in life or after death. Maybe this is his brother, maybe this is his lover, the devil knows him, but he clearly pays attention to himself. A very strong commitment of Vladimir Putin to this killed commander. The Soviet Union is trying to surround part of the Russian troops in the Sumy region. After the relative stabilization of this direction, the Ukrainian Defense Force undertakes counterattacks to push the Russian troops out of the region. Another Russian tanker has blown up already the 6th, this time right in Ust-Luga. As a result, it has spread itself to Russian publications, writing that there are suspicions of a diversion. In general, I have no suspicions. I am 100% sure that the explosion of Russian tankers is not a coincidence. Okay, there are 1 or 2, but there are already 6 of them. Such coincidences simply do not exist. If Trump does not want to fight with the Blue Fleet and European countries are afraid to be arrested here, then apparently they have to do everything themselves. The former commander of the Storm Company 433 from the Stelkov Regiment, named Kainella, wrote an appeal in which he said that the Ministry of Defense and the Russian Federation are traitors. They kill their soldiers, do not provide and deal with the unfavorable. This and much more in today's Fresh Report. You can support it with your like, comments, and subscription to the channel. All these actions help promote the video, especially your subscriptions. They are very important for YouTube algorithms. I focus on subscriptions after watching the video, during watching the video. YouTube decides whether it will show its new audience and more audiences. Therefore, thank you very much to everyone who subscribes, who likes, writes comments. In general, thank you all very much for your support and for your trust. Well, we move on to what happened in the past 24 hours. Ukrainian drones in the early morning of Monday, according to reports from the Russian side, attacked the area of the town of Krasnozavodsk in the Moscow region, where a chemical plant is located. Analysts of drones at Krasnozavodsk wrote a link to local residents, applying a video with a flight of UAVs and explosions to Ukrainian Telegram channels, Supernova and Excelnova. The Krasnozavodsk chemical plant is an enterprise in the Moscow region specializing in the production of industrial and military chemistry. The plant is known for the production of artillery charges, explosive substances, and components for ammunition, writes Supernova. The plant enters the state framework of the enterprise of the Defense Industrial Complex and supplies the Russian Defense Ministry with various ammunition, in particular night zoning cartridges, signal cartridges, electro-flamethrowers for anti-tank guided missiles, writes Axial Nova Plus. Also adding that the KKZ has the power to repair and modernize jet launch systems, including Uragan, Grad, and Tornado G. As of 2023-24, the factory has fixed the assembly, repair, and improvement of equipment for the RZO. In addition to the cartridges, the factory also produces other components of the ammunition, explosive charges, thermite pellets, capsules, detonators. Thus, in the conditions of an active war, the factory performs the function of the main manufacturer of specific ammunition and components, a workshop on the maintenance and modernization of jet systems, and a strategic goal for both sides due to its defensive importance. According to the information channel leading the attack squad at the plant, 6 hits, 3 warehouses were destroyed and the factory stopped production, which in fact, in that sense, whether this is true or not, we will find out, I think, in the next few days. The past 2 days were characterized by a collapse in Russian airports. A relatively small number of Ukrainian drones were simply paralyzed by air traffic for many hours. This is how yesterday evening the situation was described by the Astros newspaper, with a reference to Russian agencies. The Russian aviation reported the cancellation of more than 170 flights to Sheremetyevo and 90 flights to Pulkovo. According to 18:00 Moscow time yesterday, in Sheremetyevo, 171 flights were cancelled. More than 2 hours to take off, 56 flights were delayed, the press service of the Russian aviation reported. It was noted that 15,000 passengers were preparing for departure and were undergoing pre-flight procedures. According to the press service, flights of 5 southern airports, Kaluga-Grabtsevo, Pskov, St. Petersburg, Pulkovo, Tambov, and Donskoye were temporarily not serviced. At the same time, in the St. Petersburg-Pulkovo at 18 yesterday, 90 flights were cancelled for takeoff and departure. More than 2 hours are delayed for departure. 37 flights were delayed for takeoff and departure at Nizhny Novgorod Airport. By that time, 26 flights were delayed and 13 flights were delayed for departure. The situation of the Russian air transport system, which is being managed, copes with the occasional interference in its work from outside. The aircraft company has enough resources to work in the current conditions, said the Russian Air Force. Work of the airport and the company with the citizens was commented twice by the deputy head of the Ministry of Trans-Russia Vladimir Putin, added to the press service of the department. On the eve of the Russian Air Force, it reported that 174 flights in Sheremetyevo were cancelled due to a strong wind and air threat. Tens of flights were cancelled due to a possible attack by UAVs, and Astra reported in the Pulkovo airport in St. Petersburg. The damage to the airlines due to failure in the schedule of July 5-6 was estimated at 20 billion rubles. This is only for 2 days, this is only a direct damage. If Ukraine has technical capabilities, then such a situation should become permanent. The interruption in air traffic greatly affected Russian logistical capabilities. Let me remind you that in Ukraine, planes do not fly due to constant attacks by Russia. If the Kremlin wants to continue to fight, it would be good to demonstrate that the price for this will be appropriate. And probably connected with this direct news, Putin this morning sent to the resignation of the Minister of Transport Roman Starovoit. Apparently, he does not agree with the Russian aviation, which said that everything is under control and is doing just fine. In general, I don't care at all. All these ministers are absolutely identical and interchangeable. Moreover, what are they going to do? Russia is trying to destroy Ukraine, Ukraine responds. In this scheme, there are no things at all that the Minister of Transport could do. Well, unless you go with a shotgun and try to shoot down these drones. Well, more precisely, go on a pickup and try to shoot down from a machine gun. Here it is necessary to send Putin to retirement and then to the light. And so, well, they will replace one blank on another. I don't give a damn at all. Also, the Ministry of Transport reported on the leakage of ammunition on a tanker in the Ust-Luga port of the Leningrad region. Pro-Kremlin media wrote about the breakdown of the explosion on board. A significant leakage of ammunition occurred during the loading and unloading of work on the tanker Echo Wizard in the Ust-Luga port of the Leningrad region, reported the Ministry of Transport. At the time of the message, Roman Starovoit held an operational meeting, and the forces and resources of the Baltic branch of the FGBU Morspaya service were brought into full readiness for a diver's inspection of the vessel. 23 crew members were evacuated. The victims were not added to the Ministry of Transport. The department did not name the cause of the leakage of ammunition. The Kremlin media wrote that the tanker was on board and the leakage came from an explosion. No external impact was excluded. Echo Wizard walks under the flag of the Marshall Islands. The tanker arrived at the port of Ust-Luga from Antwerp. This service of tracking the ship's marine traffic is in effect. At the beginning of the year, this is the 6th similar incident with tankers that entered Russian ports. Thus, in June, an explosion occurred on the coast of Libya on the oil fuel vessel Vladimir, which transported about 1 million barrels of oil. On February 9, after the explosion in the engine department in the port of Ust-Luga, the tanker Koala began to drown. He's included in the list of shadow fleets of Russia. Also in February, information appeared about the explosion on 3 other tankers, which not long before the incident entered the Russian ports. According to the database, during the study of the current incident, the study of the ship using a sea drone, specialists found on it two holes. Their size is 1.5 meters and in the area of the engine compartment at a depth of 6-7 meters. According to sources, the metal was previously bent inward, which may indicate that the explosion occurred from the outside of the tanker, that is, the diversion. However, this information is not officially confirmed yet. Biotechnology continues to investigate the vessel, according to the database. At the same time, the special services found out that the tanker who arrived from Antwerp did not pass the inspection. As the port employees said, it was not investigated due to poor weather conditions. Well, it seems to me that this is a rather obvious story. Ukraine effectively destroys the Russian tankers of the Shadow Fleet because America has ceased to add new tankers to the list. And here the story with this Shadow Fleet is that it needs to be constantly replenished. Super works to track the Shadow Fleet to destroy it. Functionals work very well except for cases when you do not do this systematically. That is, it is not enough to add to the list. It is important that everything is kept in relation to it. And it is important that this list is constantly expanded because tankers change the name, change the flag, and that's it. And this is like a new tanker. Moreover, Western countries cannot even interact with those who have already entered the sanction list. Estonia tried to take over or was going to take over. The Russian planes scared them off, so they are not ready yet to effectively counteract the Russian bypass of the sanctions. Well, okay, not ready. Obviously, the SBU is taking everything into their own hands and taking it quite effectively. At the same time, it is interesting that for all 6 times there were no traces left, there were no threads left that would lead to the executor. No, maybe it's all a coincidence and an accident, but 6 times, I don't suffer from dysentery and I don't have a conspiracy thinking, but 6 times, no, I still think that this is a diversion. By the way, about the unnoticed things, have you heard anything about the BRICS summit? Most likely not, but he just passed right now. Even Putin spoke on Zoom and told everything about his usual golden billion and the collapse of the liberal globalization. Why on Zoom? Because Putin was afraid to go there. According to Ushakov, it was unclear whether Brazil, where the summit is held, would be able to make the decision of the International Criminal Court on the arrest of the Russian dictator. But the interesting thing is that the BRICS showed its complete inability. Despite the constant stories that this unification would powerfully defeat the entire Western world, in fact, it did not do anything. And the absence of Putin and Xi Jinping at the summit simply made it an invisible event. So the dead BRICS obviously gives off some last pre-death shrieks. Bloomberg states more specifically, and without my emotional assessment, the BRICS countries, he writes, have not been able to achieve significant progress in the creation of a system of trans-border payments for trade and investment, which has been discussed for 10 years. In a statement published on Sunday at the beginning of the meeting in Brazil, the leaders of the BRICS countries were obliged to hold additional talks about the possibility of deepening the trade integration of the bloc countries. Despite the group's desire, progress is slow, and the trends in world trade are changing so fast that it can be impossible to catch up with them. This is a rare opportunity for the BRICS because the dollar continues to feel pressure from the policy of President Donald Trump. This has become a good thing for developing markets, and traders expect the trend to continue. Although all members of the bloc support the idea of trans-border payments, for the first time the technical aspects of integration are difficult, as mentioned in the summit statement in 2015. According to 3 people familiar with the course of discussion, the central bank system in some countries is not ready yet. It will take time to adapt them, they said, adding that this is unlikely to happen in the near future. One of the sources noted that the discussion is even more complicated by the fact that the currencies of several countries of the bloc are not convertible, but on Iran and Russia for legal sanctions. Some countries may claim that the costs related to the creation and support of the common system will not be justified, given that they already have in terms of bilateral trade, added another. The document received by Bloomberg, in which the last ideas of the bloc are laid out, shows that discussions around the new investment platform called NIP have also gone down a dead end. Even Putin's allies, like Kremlin political scientist Sergei Markov, admit this. Who writes the following: the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro. What is the main thing? First, attention to this summit is low because the leaders of Russia and China do not participate in it, which, by the way, is not true. Putin participated, but on video. Second, Putin is in danger of flying across the ocean since there is a high probability of a terrorist attack, writes Markov. Let me remind you, Ushakov said something completely different and called the reasons Order Muse, not dangerous ocean. Third, the blue wants to be in the shadow of the head of India, Modi, and Modi will be in the first place, because after the summit his visit to Brazil will begin. Fourth, BRICS is increasingly clear about anti-Western Russia and China, and about Western India and Brazil. If BRICS has not yet become a real organization, it does not have a constitution nor a secretariat. Sixth, the idea of the common currency of BRICS has been stopped. Seventh, BRICS decided to stop its expansion so that the United States and Europe would not have the opportunity to block everything through new members, so they introduced a new status of state partner. This is actually a member of BRICS but without the right to vote. Eighth, the main idea of BRICS is to help each other in defending their sovereignty, and since each country's sovereignty is threatened by Western countries, then BRICS inevitably will be forced to be anti-Western. Ninth, Russia wants BRICS to develop into a real organization. 10th, but China and India do not want it. They are already enough, wrote the Kremlin political scientist Markov, and in fact demonstrates that even at the level of all these lips, the boot of Vladimir Putin is directly glued. Even there they understand that BRICS is complete nonsense. And now there are more and more commentators of this kind. This is important in the context of the ability of the ASEAN countries, these new ASEAN evil, to form a coalition. I don't consider Brazil and India, for example, a part of the ASEAN evil, and they don't consider themselves like that, most likely. But in any case, Iran, China, and North Korea not participating in BRICS, they are such an anti-Western frontier, which is built on the principles of militarism. That is, all these 3 countries are extremely militarized. The Chinese army is one of the largest in the world. North Korea is also Russian. For a long time it was considered one of the most combatable. Now it is no longer considered so, but nevertheless. And the question is how much they can cooperate. How much can all this create and not only destroy and threaten? And we see that not much. Well, that is, there is no such thing at all. They are even within the framework of some kind of creation of an economic anti-Western system. They cannot prevail. This is good news, but it is important not to rely on it. And yes, it turned out well, as it were, it was clear, but it was confirmed that their opportunities are limited, but they need to be limited even more in terms of their opportunities for offensive, their opportunities for attack. And from the point of view of creation, please let everyone create, even Iran, even anyone else. Well, before we move on to the thing that I am very interested in, I remind you that you can also support the channel financially. You can do this on Patreon, the link is in the description. The service of recurring payments where you subscribe to a certain level of subscription. Get all sorts of bonuses. We need to finally watch the program of the owners who are looking for a job. I really want to spend some time while just catastrophically nothing is missing. However, as always, it is a shame that I feed you with breakfast all the time, although I stopped giving specific deadlines. I will try very hard in the near future because you write that you support me not for the sake of any viewing, but for the sake of continuing to do what I think is important and necessary. Thank you very much for this. In general, subscribe to Patreon and buy NVPN. This is a means of bypassing blockages that allows you to bypass blockages. Now, by the way, Roskomnadzor is very popular on many VPNs. It also hits us regularly, but we know how to. Well, that is, so far the team is coping with the fact to bypass new restrictions, its new tricks with strangulation. Therefore, we are still working. If your VPN stopped working, then I recommend my NVPN. I am not its advertising person, this is my VPN. I am watching for everything to work, for the support to respond correctly on time, and to help everyone. No matter how far you are from the world of VPN, they will take you by the handle, well, if you stretch it, and they will conduct everything on how to install it, what to do, and so on. Therefore, buy NVPN for yourself, for your relatives. All this is on the link in the description. Ruble, cryptocurrency, simple currency. Everything is available in Russia. It is legal to buy VPNs, use VPNs while it is allowed. If something changes, we will definitely let you know. Well, by buying in VPN, you support this channel. Well, it seems to me quite obvious. Well, we are moving on. There is one thing that occupies me. I think now it will occupy you too. As you probably know, Russia practically never recognizes losses. In most cases, the Kremlin does not react to the death of those or other military, even generals. Well, except for the moments when they are at their own houses. But even then, the Russian authorities do not particularly peddle this topic, not to mention Putin personally. But with General Mikhail Gudkov, there is some direct obsession with the Russian dictator. Now it becomes clear why he, in principle, allocated the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet just because of Gudkov, apparently. This is really some kind of madness. For the first time in the history of Russia, Putin gave him a hero twice, and now he's carried everywhere with him, or rather with his body. Vladimir Putin on the forum Everything for Victory for the second time on the day of his death, he gave the head of the VMAF of Russia Mikhail Gudkov, who died recently in the Kursk region, a golden medal of the hero of Russia. According to Putin, in honor of Gudkov, they will name the street Vidonsk and the school VDNR and the branch of the Nakhmovsky school in Mariupol. Putin also reported that the 155th Separate Brigade of the Sea Infantry of the Pacific Fleet, which before the appointment of the head of the VMAF was commanded by Gudkov, will bear his name. It's strange that he didn't put his name on his ass. I don't know what connected them there. Maybe it was his lost brother, maybe a lover, but not a single Russian soldier was given such close attention by Putin neither during his life, nor after his death. I hope that journalists and investigators will dig into this and find how the killed General Gudkov and Vladimir Putin are connected, because there is clearly something here. Write in the comments what you think, and maybe you have some information that I haven't read in the comments. All the same, someone's classmates, colleagues, neighbors, and so on. What connects Vladimir Putin with the death of General Gudkov is definitely not clear, but there is definitely something there. I have never seen this from the side of Vladimir Putin. Well, now let's move on to what happens at the front, especially since there is quite a lot of insinuation around it. Konstantin Mashevitz describes in detail what is happening in Sumchina. According to him, Ukraine has not only stabilized the front there, but also tries to surround part of the Russian units. At the same time, Russian armed forces does not give up an attempt to reanimate its offensive. This is what Mashevitz publishes. The group of troops of the North Army, which had previously actively attacked the border of the Sumy region, has lost its ability to attack. During the last few days, the front units of Ukrainian Armed Forces have managed to quickly complicate its position in the western part of this tactical incline with several counterattacking actions in separate areas. In particular, Ukrainian Armed Forces has inclined between Kondrativka and Konstantinovka by no less than 2.5 kilometers in the battle order of the Russians, bypassing Kondrativka from the north. The Russian front units have advanced by no less than 3.24 kilometers, also bypassing it from the north. In addition, it is likely that the USU is quite successfully moving in the direction of Vorchai-Novnikhlivka, having managed to get back into the last and advance from the moment of the beginning of its counterattacking actions at this site in total complexity by 2.2 kilometers. Thus, the Russian front units summed up by Mashavets continuing to hold Kondrativka and Alexivka turned out to be quite vulnerable to the situation. The USU is quite deep, of course, and if they continue their advance between both sides of the USU encirclement no more than 5.5 kilometers, they will obviously be able to encircle them if these units and the enemy do not reach the northeastern direction in time. The USU managed to achieve this, he writes, in just 4 or 5 days the week that passed. However, it cannot be said that the front units of Russia have already completely lost their ability to attack. This is far from the case. Russia is trying in turn to block all these USU encirclements, carrying out attacks on their flanks. In addition, a number of Russian assault units, part of the Kursk group of troops, are trying to attack, storm for the sake of other areas of their encirclement in the border zone of the Sumy region of Ukraine. Russian troops, despite the year of additional forces, have not yet managed to capture the encirclement and not to break through the nozzles. Moreover, here, which is characteristic, one of the best from the connection of the Russian airborne forces, reinforced by a number of units of the Navy, is acting. This is the Kupianskaya direction. Obviously, the Russian command, having appreciated the prospects in front of them, decided to try to implement them. I described about these prospects back in the spring of this year, the counterattacks on the Great Burluk, both from the Platsdarm and from the Volchinsk direction. Obviously, within this framework, the command of the Russian Air Force organized the incursion of its forward units in the direction of the Great Burluk, from the border through the already captured border with Russia, while continuing with the forces of the 6th Army. Insisting on the attack of Spotsdarm in the direction of Dverichная Putnikova and Dverichная Kapovka, in general direction also to the Great Burluk. At the same time, the attack of the Russian Air Force from the outskirts of Kondrasheva-Golubovka in the direction of Radkovka and the northern suburbs of Kupiansk also does not stop, however. So far it does not bring significant results. At the same time, what is interesting, Russia draws some incredible successes in this direction, so gigantic that it starts to stress the Zetniks themselves, who believe that there is some kind of agony in the reports. This is what the Zetkanal military informant writes. Here, for the third week, the Russian Ministry of Defense is counting on not a little, but a large-scale operation to encircle Kupiansk with the future exit to its rear. Somehow it is difficult to call this operation, because during this period of time it was declared to take from the villages of Radkovka, Moskovka, and Sobolovka. To understand this, it literally means an intestinal breakthrough of the Kupiansk flank, the west, and cutting off a part of the supply. The problem with all this is exactly one, write the Zetniks. For all this time, there is not a single confirmation by the staff of such a deep breakthrough of the VSRF. Moreover, there are no staff from the enemy side which, well, I mean Ukraine, which was supposed to strike. Interrupting Russian units and equipment at the site. Also, there is none inherent in such a situation of characteristic scourge from the Ukrainian channels, bloggers and cartographers about the fact that everything has disappeared. So the option turns out to be two. Either the VSRF in complete information silence made an unexpected breakthrough this week, which will soon lead the VSU to the loss of Kupiansk, or someone in this direction is moving purely virtually, and soon it will be hidden. Konstantin Mashavets, meanwhile, emphasizes that all this is part of the united plan of Russia on the mobilization of the Ukrainian forces. Here's his assessment. If we consider the situation in the Sumy, Kharkov, and Kupiansk directions. In the Piston complex, it is worth noting 3 important factors. The Russian command obviously tries to drag the forces and resources of the VSU into the 3 operational directions and uses a fairly effective methodology for this purpose. It activates or, after some period of time, its front units, which have already invaded the border of the Sumy and Kharkov regions, or organizes a number of new clashes in other areas. Obviously, the offensive of Russia in the Sumy region, previously estimated by its command as a promising one, has now faced a certain crisis caused by 2 main reasons. The first reason is that the enemy had to bite out the buffer zone and suffer very significant losses, which ultimately had an impact on the combat ability of the front units of the Ukrainian Army Group. Second reason was the choice of the Russian command of the area for its Sumy throw. It was obvious not only to it, but also to the Ukrainian command from the north and the northeast, the shortest from the border, without the need to force large water barriers or overcome significant forest masses, as we can see from the east, where the river Seul and a fairly extensive forest massif. The third most alarming factor, undoubtedly, is the developing crisis of the defense of the VSU in the Kupiansk direction. At the moment, the command of the WSRF is trying, as they say, to take full advantage of its success in the northern city, to create preconditions for a successful breakthrough in Kupiansk along both shores of the Oskol from the north at the same time, to defeat the VSU group defending from the northern Don in the eastern part of the Kharkov region. Obviously, says Moshavitz, the Russian group's plan in this sense is to provide a synchronized attack in the Kupiansk direction and an activation in the Volchansk region. At the moment, although he is with script, he continues to be successfully implemented. Dovzak to him in the form of a throw to the head is obviously designed to make the Ukrainian command swing its reserves with which it could parry these enemies' operative attempts at the maximum wide front. So this is how the situation looks like at the front, from the part where there are quite serious and failures in Russia in the form of the Sumy direction, and prospects, for example. At Kupiansk, tomorrow we will talk in more detail about the Pokrovskaya direction, although I think, in principle, you can already imagine the situation as we touch with you every day directly on the front line. But it is important that from this front line you do not play too much in these cards and arrows, because there is life behind them, there are people behind them, there are losses behind them. You're talking about a war on exhaustion, not about a maneuverable war. Therefore, it is important who has advanced where which Babka village was taken, because this is the life of people, because this is the territory, because this is the motherland, but it is not a first-degree war. In general, Russia draws resources to zero. Yes, Russia still has infantry, and Russia has the opportunity to replenish it. Yes, we see that, according to different estimates, indeed, Russia manages to replenish its units of 30–40,000 people a month. This is a lot, so Russia still has meat. Nevertheless, this meat is not endless, and the technique has already ended. And how this meat is used is told by the former commander of the Storm Company 433rd from the Shooting Regiment, Military Unit 991, called Kanela. He reported that after his February appeal, he received an accusation of betrayal. But the fighter claims that the real traitor is in the Ministry of Defense and in the command of their units, as they live on soldiers and treat them as a consumable material. Friends, I greet you all, Kanela on the line. In general, I will be brief and objective. In general, there is information that I am a traitor, that I left the country. And I have an explanation for this news. I have 2 words for each word that is written there. Now I can't give you a complete explanation about this. I'm holding my breath, I'm waiting. I'll tell you what I'm waiting for later. And I want to tell you one thing. I'm not a traitor of the motherland, that's for sure. Do you know who is such a traitor of the motherland? It's the one who raised his weapon against his fellow citizen. I think it's those traitors who are being killed by our boys. They have money to help them to make their life better. They are traitors. They trade humanitarian aid in the Donetsk People's Republic. I think they are traitors. They increase the prices for all necessary military actions. You know what they are? The most important things are phones, radios, power banks, generators, and so on. They cost a lot of money. The most important thing is that the traitor is the one who killed his fellow citizen, fellow servant, brother, comrade. I don't care about any of these things, but I know who did it, and they don't like what I know. That's why they try to discredit me all the time. Do you remember the video I posted when I was talking about the commander sending soldiers and giving them criminal orders, and then they are evacuated? They leave them and rot in the field, give them to their relatives, prove it to their relatives. Come home to Nacke and say, your son is a deserter, you are an asshole. How do you have the conscience to come to your relatives and say such things when the guy is lying there rotting and they just can't get him out or don't want to get him out? And if the whole system of the current Ministry of Defense and the behavior of combat is arranged in such a way, then all the consumable materials will be there. Of course, this person is a traitor, like those who he wrote about. They all betrayed Russia, its peaceful life, its calm life, the interests of the Russian offensive, and they betrayed all this for the sake of ensuring Vladimir Putin's political ambitions. This is, of course, betrayal, invasion of the territory of a foreign country, aggression against a foreign country. This is betrayal and violation, by the way, of the Russian criminal code. You know how they believe it. And how do you put them all in jail later? There are articles, it's okay. Zenit Maxim Kalashnikov writes about the problems with supply to the Russian troops, saying the words of the fighters. Today, he writes that he talked to the guys from his unit. That's what I heard, Kalashnikov writes and then writes the text. A year ago, everyone was charged for the war. The money received from the Ministry of Defense was bought by shells, optics, radio stations, drone detectors, drones themselves, and all the stuff to them. Quad bikes, trucks, then it came to the purchase of cars. Niva UAZ were needed to complete tasks, to deliver food or shells, and much more, not to walk for tens of kilometers. Only 2 custom cars out of the 12 were given. Either they are protected or not allowed close to the front line. Naturally, gasoline, oil, and spare parts had to be paid from their own pocket. The money is not small, and they leave for everything. If necessary for victory, then it is necessary. But from the side of our command, there is no desire to understand and get involved, how the tasks are performed, the data given to them. The commander is even obliged to perform the tasks, and no matter what, it does not bother them at all. They say that they pay a bonus for the shot-down drones. We have one Unicum, so he has shot down dozens of them, even several big ones like Baba Yaga. But there is nothing for them and no one, our colonel says so. We are not here to earn money, but to defend our motherland. He scratches beautifully with his tongue and on his Niva on the line prefers not to ride. Everything is set up for us. Well, not often he does it. There they can kill for the FPV drone, which we destroy several times a day. We do not even get sick. Lovers to shoot on the plates, welcome to the front line. The prospect is such to perform military duty, continue to ride on their cars and stay in the final without pants, spilling on hot spare parts. From 300,000 rubles in demolition and now more give for a new car. On average, a month goes up to 50,000 rubles for expenses, and if something breaks, then you can stay without a salary at all. Or, well, beep them, these cars. Let the commanders themselves think about what we are going to carry, shells and equipment. The guys in the neighboring battery did not burn too. They collect money for the next one. In our battery, the soldier did not change the knocked engine, he just pushed it off the road. I thought, get rid of your UAZ. This is not an army but a partisan detachment on self-sufficiency in the rear of the enemy. The Russian military complains. Another Russian military who writes that he's tired of the war found Ivan Filippov in his almanac Zadadia. Namely, in the Telegram channel on the Western Front, Unchanged, he posted text from the Z channel Govert Rukovodstvo, one of the authors of which not so long ago died in an assault. That's what the surviving members of the Telegram channel write. Admin Svatovsky. There are no changes. We cling to every square. Sometimes aviation helps. I'm losing good guys. I would never have thought that I would say that the war has started. I understand that breaking is not an option. I'm just tired. I'm tired of begging. I didn't think that I wouldn't be needed by anyone, and I'm afraid that this will affect our children in the future if we don't finish it. We won't finish it now, he writes. And this is absolute nonsense in the sense that, well, your children have no. First of all, I hope you don't give birth. Well, that is, it would be terrible if you gave birth. This is a disaster for Genofond, but if you give birth, then your children are not in danger if they don't be assholes in you. If they don't go to the territory of a foreign country, if they don't set their goals to destroy a foreign country as you set for the sake of the ambitions of an old evil grandfather. Therefore, well, the future of your children depends on you. The longer and longer you kill now, the more you will destroy neighboring countries, the more you will continue military aggression, the less chance that Russia will ever have the opportunity to restore. Become a normal, adequate country with neighbors and not fall apart, or become some kind of North Korea on minimums. Because the current North Korea will soon be an example of general prosperity for today's Russia. Well, about this somehow later. Well, and finally, a little bit about what is called new culture in Russia. A resident of Novosibirsk started a blog in which he looks for, as it seems to him, homosexuals and beats them up on camera. As the news was discovered, 21-year-old Dmitry P. started a Telegram channel in which he asked subscribers to report on homosexuals only with proofs. He also said that he caught him today. I only regret that I didn't hit him even harder. I'll replace the offensive words with their analogy. I didn't do as hard as I wanted. Later, Dmitry posted photos of a local resident and then a video on which he was beaten up. At the same time, the victim doesn't understand what's going on, but the guy in the video asks, "What have I done to you?" "He kicked me out," says this gay wrestler. I wanted to ask him how he came to this and what he needed to become a normal guy. I've had this kind of violence the last time. The next video will be only to tell the common sense to young people, Dmitry wrote. Also today, the author of the channel said that he found another character who wants to have an interview with me. We are against violence. The last post turned out to be a misunderstanding of inexperience, he wrote. In response to a negative comment, however, Dmitry said that he does not hide his beep and that he will beat everyone. He says, I don't care about people, I will ask you how they are, who wants to communicate against my topic, come, do whatever you want with me, shoot me, I will beat them to the end, he said. In principle, there is nothing interesting in a particular character. This, of course, is not particularly surprising, and this is a clear example of how the rhetoric and propaganda of hatred leads to specific consequences. Russia, in its official rhetoric, tries to hide for the fact that, say, everyone does what he wants, but we are against the propaganda of homosexuality. The story is that, in addition to the fact that if you wanted a person of your gender from some movie, then the matter is clearly not in the movie. And this guy, it seems to me, would accept what he calls himself, and life would have become easier for him. So the fact is that the formation of negatives in one or another group, striking it in the right and slandering people as some kind of wrong, always invariably with a 100% probability, leads to physical abuse. In suppression of society, no matter how much you protect your children, it doesn't happen. Children are not threatened by homosexuals. Children are threatened by propaganda, hatred, militarism, and the common people on the streets who believe that they can beat other people. It's important to understand, pedophiles in power threaten children. Many children are threatened by the fact that they will be taken to the front when they grow up, that their fathers are sent by a local storm, that their mothers are killed because of this, or that their fathers return from the front and kill their mothers. This is what children are threatened by. You don't have to love people of a different orientation or anyone else. For example, I don't love all people the same, but when you walk on the path of hatred towards a person for who he is, for determined characteristics, race, orientation, anything else, you are evil, you are a problem, and in a normal society you will be stopped. Of course, I am not addressing this guy. To this guy again, you just have to accept yourself and maybe his life will get a little better. I am addressing all those who claim that Russia is doing the right thing for the current policy of hatred, but still believe in themselves. No, well, yes, I condemn war and aggression, but with gays, yes. Gays should not walk around with their red hair, with them, of course, yes. Well, about such people, I know they are among my audience. This is the way to the abyss. No matter what you think, this is the path to the abyss. This is unacceptable. Between this and an attempt to destroy another country, there is a direct connection. Hatred by a determined sign is easily replicated in absolutely any manifestation. When you step over that line that a person has the right to self-determine their life, their destiny, if it does not interfere with anyone, when you step over it, it is easier for you to be inside the space of hatred. And then there is someone behind the eyes of the wrong cut, as it seems to you, not the color of the hair, not the clothes, and so on. This is all this great idea of hate. Refuse it, please. Refuse it. You can hate, and you need to hate people for their choice. If they decided to become a fascist occupant, if they fight for the destruction of some other nation, or if, in principle, they are aggressors, this is worthy of hatred. Hatred is worthy of specific actions and choice, the choice to be on the side of evil. As for what kind of person he is, what kind of person he was born, or what kind of person he became, as for his aesthetic preferences, whom he wants to love, with whom he wants to be, it's not up to you, it's not up to your mind. Everyone has the right to be who he wants, and it gives you the right to be who you want. And when you start to intervene in other people's space, when you start to try to destroy the personality and impose your lifestyle, this is a problem. Well, of course, some people will disagree, but it seems to me that this is a bright example that shows what it all leads to. And once again, I emphasize that all Putin's stories are that I'm not against gays, we respect gays, the main thing is not to promote children, this is bullshit. To poison society, to homosexuals, to Ukrainians, to foreigners, now to Azerbaijanis, this is a process that takes place in the Russian state. Hatred has become the ideology of Russia, and Vladimir Putin made it the ideology of the Russian Federation. Well, Michael Nacke was with you, and see you soon. All the best. Bye.